good evening. We about to have some fun, y'all. All right, can you guys hear me? Yes, yes, yes. All right. All right, we're gonna have some fun if you let me be honest, funny, transparent, and help me to offend you. um, I am looking at some of the comments. I'm going to go ahead and get started. This webinar is called The Myth of Men, and so I'm going to be unraveling some truths that can help you in your dating life, relationships, marriage. It does not matter if you're married, if you're going through a rough marriage, rough time, if you're dating, if you're single, if you want to be married, if you don't want to be married. It doesn't matter. I think the information that's provided tonight will help you. And again, marriage is a spiritual thing, and so you have to use spiritual principles. But what I mean when I say that, it doesn't mean that I'm going to use like spooky, non-practical things. I'm going to use very much so real, relative things from my experience as a counselor, and also my experience in my own journey in my marriage. And me and my husband have been doing marriage counseling for over 10 years, and we've learned a lot about couples. I've studied a lot. I've studied men, and it's a great thing to be able to understand men, and it can offend women at times. But I think if you take on the journey and make it a fun task, it will revolutionize your life in your relationships. I've had to journey through it also. I know for you that there are probably things you just don't understand, but I'm going to help you to understand a little bit more clearly how men operate. And I'm not going to do that apart from helping to unravel you as a woman. What people don't realize when it comes to men and women, we as women, we have a lot of influence when it comes to men, period. And it's really hard to debunk some of the myths concerning men outside of us first, trying to take a look at ourselves and see how they react to women, their responses, their behaviors, their temperaments, their emotional needs. All of these things are important when it comes to understanding men. I don't think that women understand themselves enough to know the power again and the influence and the value that we can bring to men's lives as we evaluate ourselves and see how we can influence them to respond in maybe some of the ways that we desire. You will not change a man, all right? You will not get him to do what you want him to do, and you will not get him to see the things that you see. You will not get him to have the perspectives you have, the brain you have, the outlook on life, none of it. And so I think it is important, again, to stop or to pull the energy out of trying to change men, and let's try to understand them, and let's try to change ourselves in the process so that we can be a positive influence in their lives. Now, some of the stuff might offend you, and I'm sorry. I'm just going to apologize right now. I'm sorry. And I always say that the things that will set you free will also offend you first. And I'm going to share a little bit about my story and my journey so you can understand how offended I was also. And so, again, I know you don't understand men, but understanding yourself, even independent of them, will help this journey a lot, make this journey a lot easier. Now, as far as just explaining men as a whole, and again, once I share my story, I'm going to give you some practical myths that we think concerning relationships that are just not true. And then I'll go over some pointers that are good for healthy relationships, to better healthy relationships. And even if you don't have one, these are things you should be learning. You don't want to wait until you're married as a single woman to learn what marriage is about. You can learn as much as you can now. Now, I'm not saying that that's going to safeguard you, because it's almost like, I don't know, it's like being a surgeon. You know, you can study, you can go to school, you can dissect bodies, dead bodies, and all of that. But when you get somebody on the table who's dying and you got to cut their heart open and do a bypass or whatever you got to do at that moment, that's when it becomes real to you, and it's more real than any education you probably would have had. However, I still think that it gives you an advantage to learn some things and to dwell according to men and women alike in knowledge. And so there's some things we just got to know about marriage because you won't be successful if you are lacking the knowledge and the wisdom that you need. Now, in general, women tend to feel like men don't always value women. And it is hilarious, some of the books that are out there. I just look to see what kind of relationship books are out there. Like there's a book that says How to Not Hate a Man After Having Kids. I just thought that was so funny. Because the truth is, after you have kids, it's a different dynamic. And every season is different. And that's what I mean. It's just so hard to prepare for it. Just on a learning base, you got to just throw yourself into it. But it's just so funny because these are real issues that people have. I've known women who start to despise their mates after having kids because, again, they don't understand men. They don't even understand how men respond differently to the stress of having kids, and women are just made very differently, and so we respond to stress even differently. But sometimes it's even hard for men to really explain the reasons why they value their women and their wives, and it's because their women and their wives are the reason why they value everything. For a man, even going to hang with his buddies or going to work or whatever it is that he does, he is happy doing it when he's in a healthy relationship because statistically relationships help men a lot better, and they want the same emotional connection that we want. We just don't always understand. Outside of a good woman standing next to a man, a lot of times a man will just go through the motions. And so we got to understand that sometimes they may not communicate just how valuable we are to them, but we got to learn how to decode them and kind of pick up the communication outside of language. Now, here's another thing that I want to share with you really quickly. And this is for those who want to get married, and I'm sure some married people will understand this. But men see relationships, and this is just the hardcore truth, whether it offends women or not. Men see relationships as pretty much a place to relax, more than like a dynamic interaction, okay? It's a secure place for him. So, to have a woman next to him or to have a relationship is almost to a man like recharging his batteries so that he can go back out into the world and take whatever the world blows his way. And so for men, it is very, very different how they even view relationship because it's a secure base. As long as she's around, even if she's in the other room, it's a secure base. Whereas women are very different because we like to also feel secure enough to relax also, but our security comes when we have heavy interactions with men. And so both men and women want security, but security is very different for the male and the female species, and we have to understand that. Now, unfortunately, again, instead of understanding it and trying to figure out how to relate to one another, women are often looking for men to complete them and to fulfill them. And single women, and let me tell you this, if you're single and you desire a relationship, you desire a husband, you desire kids, that is not a bad desire. I think it's a good desire to have, and it can even be a healthy desire. The problem comes when the desire becomes a distraction to your overall purpose in life. And I'm going to explain to you a little bit later why that is so important. If your purpose and the thing you were created to do and be is interrupted by a desire, even if it's good, then the whole situation will turn out bad because it's a distraction and it's distracting you from your very identity. And that is more important when it comes to a relationship, okay? So we cannot look for men to bring fulfillment or to complete us or anything like that. And so this is about also taking a journey of self and making you become more attractive, because really women don't get what they want. What they get is who they are. So that is key, because when a relationship distracts you from who you are and start to rebuild a false identity within you, because you've gotten desperate, and when people get desperate they make stupid decisions and all of this, then you got to know what you're going to get yourself into and what you're adding to that relationship, and it is not going to end well. So my question is, would you marry you with what you know about yourself, or do you got some work to do? Single women. Now, married women, we're going to help you out too. Okay. Now, listen, all of this, this thing with marriage was never a focal point of mine, to be honest. And I was young, and me and my husband, we met each other, and trust me, we did not start off as wise as we are now. Things did not start off as smooth, and unfortunately, some married couples become wiser and some become more fools. Okay, along the way, depends. Did your heart get bitter? Are you angry? Was there something that happened within the marriage that made you upset? And so some people make marriage better and some people make it worse. But here's the raw truth about all of it. No matter how much you want to have a good marriage, it will never be better than you. And so I had to run into that hardcore truth. Me and my husband, we dated, and this is not even something that I always recommend, but nevertheless, it's what happened with us. But he pursued me. He pursued me. Okay, I did not pursue him. I was actually fine. Me and my relationship with God, I was just having such an amazing time. And then he pursues me, and at the time, he's a pastor. He just started a church 6 months ago, and so now a pastor wants to date me. The thought of a pastor dating me was unbelievable, because I never wanted to marry a pastor, and I've said this before. I never wanted to marry a pastor, and oddly enough, I got a lot of people who used to say, "Would you ever marry a pastor?" Don't even know why they kept asking me that question all throughout college, and I said I would never marry a pastor. I'm not like, first of all, I haven't had the best experiences with overall. Now I've had great experiences individually, but just overall in the body of Christ with pastors' wives. A lot of them were rude, mean, intimidating, religious, and the thought of being a pastor's wife was so far from my mind. The thought of even wanting to have responsibility for people, the thought of being in church on a Sunday and I can't go home and watch the football game, because I was always into sports. I like basketball and football and track and field, and so I did not want to marry a pastor. And so he pursued me, and long story short, I had a mentor that really helped journey me through everything. And he proposed to me 4 months later. Now, that was, I had an idea in my head, if I ever did get married, how old I was going to be. And it was a lot older, because, again, I was just enjoying my single life way too much. And so, but I did accept, we built our relationship. We started to talk. We had a lot of good boundaries. And then we were married 6 months later from that point. So from the time I met him to the time we got married was 10 months. We did do 6 months worth of counseling between the 4 months and the 10 months that we got married. And so I know that you would understand that if someone meets somebody, they're engaged in 4 months, and then they're married in 6 months, that there's just a lot of things that you don't know about that person. And although I took as many notes as I could, we didn't realize a lot of things until we actually got married. And so I had all kind of fears. I never forget the first time when we got home from the wedding. We got into, or that first week, we got into a bad argument because I had fears of having children, because I heard women screaming in labor pain, and I didn't realize that I had a strong fear. And he came home talking about kids. And I'm like, are you crazy? What? I'm not enough? I ain't enough for you? Now you want kids, so that's why you married me, you want kids. You know how women do. We get like that sometimes. And so we wind up having a lot of arguments, a lot of things we just didn't realize about each other. I had a lot of fears. There's a lot of pressure on me. He's a pastor. There's a lot of people telling me what I need to do, trying to push me. He tried to push me into the ministry and real quick, and and he, we talk about this very much so openly, and wanted me to be a certain way, and I wanted him to be a certain way. So we put them pressures on top of each other, and it just brought a lot of inner turmoil between the two of us. And so we used to argue a lot. It wasn't like crazy like some of the stuff I see necessarily, but we did. We had a lot of differences, a lot of arguments that would go on within us. And one day I said, you know what? I felt this pressure of generational curses rising up in me as an independent woman. And I didn't understand what it took to be a wife, okay? And he that finds a wife finds a good thing and obtains favor from God. And so I wasn't being really a wife. I was still kind of being selfish and running my own life. I didn't want him to have any input in anything because I was being what you call, I guess, a strong black woman. I had the strong black woman syndrome. And I realized at some point, I think this strong black woman syndrome might lead me down divorce at some point. And I already had a lot of generational curses, and I could just feel my DNA rising up in me for some generational things that had existed in my bloodline. And so I went to the bookstore one day and I said, no, something has got to change. And I'm like, well, maybe he need to be the one to change. So I go and I buy this book. I can't remember the exact book, but it was something like How to Change Your Husband in 7 Days. I don't know if it was 30 days or 7 days, but it was a book called How to Change Your Husband in 7 Days. I said, well, here is God. I done found the book that I need for my life and my relationship. He needs to change, and I'm gonna figure out how to change this man. So I buy this book and I take it home, and that's what the cover said. Man, when I tell you I opened up that book, it was a big hoax. I got myself in trouble because I opened up this book and it's all about how to change him through changing me. And I'm like, what? No, he's the one that needs to change. And so, long story short, he found it and got offended, but it was about a year later because I hid the book underneath my bed. And at some point, I was like, I should take this cover off because I don't want him to see this. But I really thought I was about to change this man. But I read into some truths that really offended me. And it really put me together because I came from the mindset that when you're in a marriage and when you're in a relationship, I don't care what happens. The man is supposed to love his wife like Christ loved the church. I don't care if I snap on you, if I do something wrong, you got to be the bigger man because God told you to act like Christ, and Christ laid his life down for the church. So this is the background, this is the mindset that I had, and quickly did I realize, I did not have a husband like that. And so that got me in a lot of trouble. And so along the way, I learned how to debunk some myths and learned how to debunk some things that I thought marriage was that I realized marriage really isn't. And this is helpful again to relationships also. And so I want to go through about how many myths do I have? I wrote them down, y'all. I want to start with seven myths that I've learned along the way. These are things that I learned again from the experiences of others, from myself, from research. I'm a researcher, so I do look at a lot of statistics and just from relationships and learning from men. I ask men a lot of questions and I listen to a lot of men talk about men and what they need as a husband. And so here we go. I'm going to start first of all with the first myth, and this will actually shock you, but a lot of people, if you're out there and you're single and you think that marriage is going to make you lose your singleness or not be single. I don't want to be single. I don't want to be single. The first myth I want to reveal to you is that there's a myth that says when you're married, you're no longer single, and that is a myth. That is a myth. And the reason why relationships go bad is because we marry people who are not whole or single. They're not distinct. They're not separate. They're not unique. They don't want to separate from their parents. They're not impressive. You go ahead and try to change a man who don't want to buy you a cheeseburger on a date. He ain't gonna be buying you nothing, and he ain't gonna be paying your bills. You're gonna be working to pay all the bills. And so we marry these people who are not whole, are not single. And what I want you to know is that you still have to pursue your singleness in marriage. We must pursue singleness, not marriage, because all of creation is built upon singleness. And people get divorced because they have not yet learned how to be single. It's important. It brings value to a man. And even there's a quote in the Bible where some disciples are trying to ask Jesus about marriage and divorce, and he actually goes back and he says, "Haven't you read yet?" He says that in the beginning, God created, or the Creator made male and female, and for this reason, a man should leave his mother and father and be united with his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. And so what he was trying to tell them was like, do you not know in the beginning I made male and female? A couple didn't technically start all of creation, but one man started all of creation. And so singleness is the most important state of human development. And we have to know that. And we think when we get married that we don't have to pursue our singleness, our wholeness, and that we don't have to live still in our own identity. We're looking for somebody to fix us. And so we just got to remember that the foundation for all humankind is a single individual, okay? And so you're not going to marry someone to improve yourself. You will not be improved by marriage. You will be exposed by marriage, and you better be worth being exposed, okay? Now, your marriage is always, and this is for single people and this is for married people, your marriage is always only going to be as good as your singleness. Every defect you have will be revealed, all your selfishness, everything. And let me tell you, for men, there is nothing worse than marrying someone who's not single, okay? Because what she's going to become is a burden. She's going to become a victim. He's going to be a babysitter. You're going to become a leech to a man and his life and his work. You are there to help him. And if you don't have singleness and if you don't have identity, you will become a burden, okay? So you want to offer value to him and not a burden to him. So stop thinking that you're going to leave your singleness and get all wrapped up in another world, and it's going to, make you any different. You're going to have to continue to pursue that for yourself. Myth number 2, so I can keep it moving. Here is a myth. Relationships are 50-50. No. So when we approach relationships where this is a 50-50 relationship, I'm putting in my time, you putting in, no. Relationships are nowhere near 50-50. Relationships are all about roles, okay? And guess what? Sometimes, temporarily, those roles can be reversed, but they should only be temporarily. Let me say that. They should only be temporarily. So for men, okay, and women, you need to know this because you need to know what kind of man you're going to marry. And if you're already married, I hope this webinar helps you, okay, and get some counseling too. Men are supposed to protect. They are supposed to provide. They are supposed to love. They have their roles. Women are supposed to submit. They are supposed to be the keepers of their home and their children. They're supposed to manage their home. Now, I am not saying that the roles, again, cannot be reversed from time to time, from season to season. But what I will say is the healthiest marriages are built upon people being in their rightful place. Yes, I do believe that men should provide for their household. Yes, I do believe that women should make money, okay? And it's okay for women to make money and to pay some bills, okay? However, the burden of provision is not supposed to be on a woman. And if the burden of provision or the role of provision is on a woman, she will not be a good wife. So I do believe that men push women out of their roles by being burdened with a role that they're supposed to be, and if first things are first and second aren't going to be second. A wife cannot be the provider and a helpmate at the same time. She's going to break down, she's going to be mad, she's going to be angry, and all of it. And this is not just, this is a spiritual thing. I believe it is the best way. But I have also looked at some statistics and saw that the healthiest and the most prosperous families, wealthy families, have the dynamics of the roles right, where the woman is primarily the keeper of her home and she manages her home, and he is primarily has the burden of provision on them. And they not only look at it through questionnaires and interviews and talking with the children and things like that, they actually put wires up to their brain to literally see what levels of happy hormones and endorphins they had in their brain from being in an environment where mommy was more available to be the keeper of the home and to manage the children and things like that and be a mother while the father be a father. Now, again, I'm not saying that women cannot work. I'm not saying that they can. I worked. I worked for 12 years at a hospital in the field, help, with some things concerning the house finance and stuff. But I never ever had the burden of provision on me, and I never had my husband have the burden for a long term. I actually left my job. We planned it all, so don't go out telling your husband you can't work no more. But I actually left my job so that he can be better in his role, because my job required me to travel. And I just believe God that we would put ourselves in a more healthy situation environmentally for our children, our overall success, our future, our finances, all of it. If we would at least plan to make sure that our roles were well. Now, do I still make money? I absolutely do. I work, and so I work more probably now than I did when I was working. But I don't have the burden on me. I have the burden of managing my household, and I do not put that burden on him. And I am okay with it. Now, men, if you are on here, I'll just say this really quick, because there was some men who said, "Can I come on?" I said, "Absolutely, you can come on." If you want your wife to be the wife of your dreams, find a way to make sure she is not burdened with provisions, so that she can manage her house and take care of the responsibilities that she needs to take care of, so that you can do what God created you to do. And I always say this to men. Listen, I say this to men. Look, if you talking about no, because I know men like this, and I've had to interrupt and tell them what I felt about it. When men say, "No, it's 2020. It's almost 2020. It's too, this the new age. We in a new age. This the new age. This gonna be 50-50. You gonna pay for this, and you okay." Well, guess what? I want you to make sure that you breastfeed when the kids come, and make sure that you wake up at night and give that baby some milk, okay, right from your chest. Okay, if it's 50-50, and this is how it goes, but guess what? You cannot do that. If it's 50-50, I had 2 kids and you have 2 kids. Is that your role? No, impossible. We have to understand roles, okay? Now, this is the same thing for women. When it comes to managing her house, you have no business being so engulfed in your career long term that you cannot manage the house. Things need to change. You're going to bring destruction to your household. And again, the roles can be, men might lose a job or something might happen. I understand that. We got your back. But listen, this ain't about to be no 2-3 years, all right? Like, we got to get this back, because a woman needs to be freed up to manage her house. And again, she cannot do both. All right. And so I'm just being very real. I'm being very transparent. My husband believes the same thing. We both believe it. I don't burden him with my responsibility. He don't burden me with his. But we also assist and we do these things. Yes, he takes care of the kids. Yes, he takes care of the house. Yes, he cooks and he does all of that. And yes, I bring in money. But again, there's a difference between having a burden and putting someone in your actual role long term to do this. It is not healthy for your household. And that is a myth that relationships are 50-50. They are not, they will never be. And you need to realize that. And anybody trying to make their man do what they do with the kids and I clean up the house and I do it. No, he's not going to do it. He's not going to be burdened with it. He's going to have an attitude. He may help out with some things, but he will never do what you do. He will never do what you do. And she cannot do what you do, men. And if you put each other in those roles, y'all going to break down and it's going to be probably a breakup coming. All right. Number 3. Myth number 3 is it's all about communication. How well did that go for you the last time you asked him, honey, we need to talk? How well did that go?